when Randall's voice whispered through the static-filled channel of the pilot's radio, rather than the satellite phone. It wasn't just the crackling of polar ice that echoed in my ears, but the sound of my heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. In the frozen silence of Alaska's Pinnacle Cove, I learned how a soul could transform into a cold, hard mass of ice in an instant. In that moment, fear struck first, followed by a burning, pure rage with a unique Alaskan harshness. Randall, my husband, was lying to me. This was Pinnacle Cove, a small settlement on Alaska's rugged southern coast, a place where the sun rarely showed its face in winter, where people depended on each other to survive. I had been married to Randall Vance for 3 years. He was the most respected bush pilot in the area and ran a small, successful logistics company. My life was warm despite the cold weather because I trusted him blindly. That night, Randall claimed he was leaving on an urgent business trip to Anchorage. I drove him to the airport myself and saw him off with a warm hug. But just a few hours after that hug, the words I heard in my earpiece, "Baby Sierra will never know," turned my whole world into the thin ice of a frozen river 20 miles away. Randall wasn't just hiding an affair. It was the beginning of a conspiracy that would swallow my entire inheritance and future. It was past midnight. The temperature had dropped to 10 degrees, and the wind was beating against the exterior of the house like a merciless drum. I was sitting in the house Randall had left for his urgent trip, with a warm cup of tea and a radio listening device in my hand. This device was intercepting Randall's radio communications. I put on the headphones, and through the static, I heard Randall's tense, frantic, and deceitful voice. "Calm down, honey. Sierra didn't suspect a thing. I didn't even have to pretend I forgot my wallet at home. She's that naive. She believes I'm flying out of Anchorage in the morning." My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it would burst through my chest. The wallet? Yes! The wallet he had hurriedly left on the kitchen counter on his way to the airport. "Is the insurance policy ready?" Randall asked. "This is our last chance. If Sierra finds out about that trust fund, it's all over." The woman's voice on the other end was horribly familiar. It belonged to my best friend, Blair. Blair, the person I always cried on, the person I shared our little problems with Randall. Blair hissed, "It's done. Randall, within a week, the property will be officially transferred to your name. The old trapline rents and Deepwater Harbor rights Rourke, her father, left him. Once we get that money, we can leave Alaska forever, just like we planned." The inheritance. My father had left me the town's most valuable asset, the harbor share where the fishing boats were moored, and which always brought in money. On our first wedding anniversary, Randall had convinced me to sign papers that included a clause stating that, in the event of an unexpected death, all assets would pass to the spouse. The teacup in my hand fell to the floor and shattered. Randall and Blair were planning to get rid of me. I remembered the box of vitamins Randall had been insisting I take over the last few months. This had been months in the making. Randall spoke anxiously. "But you know, we have to take care of this quickly. If I don't pay the first installment of my debt by tomorrow, those union types in Seattle will be after us. We can't hide in Pinnacle Cove. Gambling debts." Blair's voice tightened. "Then you need to send Sierra right away. Send her to that isolated cabin. It'll be easier to make it look like an accident there." But the real shock was Randall's response. "It's not that simple. I left her a shelter, just like Case's left Vesper. If she dies directly, the insurance and inheritance process drags on. We have to condemn her to misery so no one suspects. The only thing I left her is that old, dilapidated hunter's cabin outside town. Then she'll disappear in that misery." Blair chuckled sarcastically. "Clever. Poor little wifey will freeze to death in that abandoned cabin." I took off my earpiece. A shiver ran through my body, but it wasn't from the cold. Betrayal, humiliation, and the threat of death ignited a fire of hatred within me that I had never felt before. They had written a script for my life, the end of the poor wife. But I would not be the victim. I had to act immediately. Randall would be back in a few hours, using the excuse that his flight was canceled. Liam thought he'd cut off the money, but I knew about the little savings my father had left me, a savings Liam had never learned. "Of course, honey, I'll manage," I said, pretending to blink tears. Randall smiled with a look of grim triumph. "Fine. I'll be back to pick you up at 6 p.m. Be ready." When the door closed, Sierra's heart began to race. There were 8 hours until 6 p.m., enough time to put his plan into action. I quickly grabbed the satellite phone and dialed the emergency number Silas had provided. The voice on the line answered in formal, calm English. I introduced myself and gave my father's name, Langston Rourke. "I'm Langston Rourke's daughter. I've been given a code name, North Star." The voice on the other end softened immediately. "Understood, North Star. Your father's instructions have been on file for years. Your own cargo plane and pilot will land on Pinnacle Bay's old runway in 3 hours. A private attorney is waiting for you in Anchorage." "But I need to get to the cabin Randall is sending me to," I said. "Liam will drop me off there at 6 p.m. So the plan changes, North Star. The cargo plane will land behind the old cabin in 3 hours. Your pilot is a former military intelligence officer, codenamed Bear. Trust him. He was your father's closest contact. Now, everything had to go like clockwork. I tried to find the hidden safe in Liam's house. Liam's birth date didn't work. Our wedding anniversary? Blair's voice on the radio suddenly came to mind. This is our last chance. If Sierra finds out about that inheritance fund, it's all over. So the safe was for the inheritance documents. My father's only obsession with the inheritance was ensuring his family's name wasn't tarnished. The date the inheritance was signed. I tried entering the code as my wedding date, as Vesper had. A long, pleasant beep sounded, and the mechanism clicked open. Inside were coins, countless photos of Blair, and most importantly, a handful of other capsules. Capsules filled with the same white powder. Sierra placed the capsules in a plastic bag and found a ledger containing a record of all Randall's banking transactions and gambling debts. This was proof of Randall's financial manipulation. But the real shocker was that the dilapidated shack he'd sent me to was actually my escape hatch. At 6 p.m., Randall arrived right on time. I climbed into his car. I'd packed an old, battered suitcase, as if I were truly heading off to the slums. All the evidence was in the inside pocket of my heavy winter jacket. Finally, we reached the old hunting cabin. It looked like a truly haunted house, dilapidated, with broken windows. Randall kicked open the door. "There's your house. You'll be safe here," he said sarcastically. "A few days, I'll be back." Randall threw my suitcase into the mud. "Don't go out. The weather is dangerous. I'll come back tomorrow. If you go anywhere, that inheritance will be ruined, remember?" Randall got in his car and drove off without a backward glance. I was left alone in front of the door. I immediately set off to find the red pine tree. Finally, I found one, thicker and older than the others, with a moss-covered trunk. With the light from my phone, I saw a carefully carved symbol, the symbol of a bear. I began digging in the frozen ground beneath the symbol. After 10 minutes, my shovel hit solid metal. Anticipation building. Where Randall thought I'd abandoned him, my father's true legacy awaited me. A small metal chest. Silas's instructions echoed in my mind. The weight of the salmon, your 12th birthday, the weight of the salmon I caught on my 12th birthday, 31.7 pounds. With trembling fingers, I entered the code into the chest, 317. The chest opened with a quiet click. There was no gold, jewelry, or money inside. Only two things, a thick envelope and an old map. On the envelope was a note in my father's handwriting. Sierra, never give up. Remember, the greatest hunter is always the most patient. Sierra opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, and the words at the end became Sierra's vow of revenge. Randall thought he was going to get the harbor stock, but he didn't know something. The stock's true ownership is tied to a secret London holding company. The lawyer there is Sterling. Call him. He's waiting for you. Sierra held the envelope in awe and wonder. His father had used Randall's greed to lead him to the true empire in London. Randall thought he had left him to die in misery. Instead, he had launched him on the path to the pinnacle of revenge. He quickly pulled his satellite phone from his pocket. A cold, bone-chilling wind slashed Sierra's face. She threw the $500 Randall had given her into the air. She hid the trunk in the snow. With her satellite phone in hand, her fingers trembling, she dialed Sterling's number. Bear, the pilot, was waiting for her behind this cursed shack in Pinnacle Bay. She was no longer a victim, but ready to become the mastermind of Operation North Star. When the satellite phone connection went out, Sierra was burning despite the freezing air around her. Randall thought he'd left her here to die, but his father had left him a ticket to the real empire in London. His hand was still on the phone, where he dialed Sterling's number, when the roar of a powerful engine from just behind the cabin overwhelmed the roar of the blizzard. I wrenched the door open and ran behind the cabin. I pulled the snowmobile key from my pocket. In front of me stood a snowmobile, complete with helmet and thick winter coveralls. But right next to it, a military-style cargo plane, much larger than Randall's, a bush pilot, had landed. The propeller wind whipped the snow into my face like needles of ice. The plane's side door opened. A tall, broad-shouldered man pointed at me with a flashlight. Only his eyes were visible behind his coveralls and helmet. It must have been the pilot codenamed Bear. "North Star?" he shouted, his voice muffled by the engine noise. "Yes?" "Quick, we've got 5 minutes. The wind is picking up, and we're out of time to keep Randall's radio busy." I quickly jumped onto the snowmobile. Bear put me behind the snowmobile and started the engine. We sped away from the cabin, following Randall's tracks. Surviving in Alaska meant wading through mud. Now, survival meant forcing trust, just as Amara had been forced to trust her father. As we drove, Bear spoke. "Your father, Langston Rourke, made me swear to protect you 20 years ago. We knew Randall's greed. This cabin was just a refuge for distraction. You had to board this plane in a blizzard while Randall thought you were in ruins." We soon reached the plane. Without shutting off the engine, Bear guided me into the dark cargo hold of the plane. Inside was a small heated compartment. The snowmobile was quickly covered with camouflage netting. "Randall, when will he be back?" I asked, still sounding panicked. Bear held the radio close to his ear. "He'll be back in a few hours. We'll wait here until a legal route from the airport opens. In the meantime, you have a message. From London." Bear handed me a small, encrypted tablet. The screen displayed a single name, Sterling. Sierra's only solid evidence was the poison capsules and the debt ledger. Which evidence do you think Sierra should send Sterling first? The audio recording of Randall's infidelity with Blair, or the debt statement? I took the tablet. It was a secure communication channel that Randall could never monitor. The message from Sterling was brief, but its content resembled operational instructions from Amara's father. North Star, confirm before takeoff. Did Randall think you abandoned his property at Willow Creek, the cabin in Alaska? Did he insult her? I quickly typed back, yes. He left me only $500 and mockingly told me to get by in misery. The reply came within seconds. The formality of the message suggested that Sterling, like Vesper had encountered, was purely business-minded, not dramatic, perfect. The script worked. That was the late Langston Rourke's, your father's, instructions. You were to let them hurt him. Only when they deemed you worthless would they personally fire you. That was the only trigger that would absolve you of all legal risk. Was Randall and Blair's laughter and their throwing my suitcase in the mud part of my father's plan? The very thought made me sick. To protect me, my father had conspired with my greatest enemies, their arrogance and greed. The bear is listening, the pilot said. I put the radio to my ear. Randall's conversation with Blair was playing. I don't understand, Blair. He must have been in that cabin. The blizzard was going to start by 4. How come he's not here yet? He hasn't taken the poisoned vitamins I left. Blair was panicking. Maybe he's lost. His body's frozen. Just wait a few hours. That poor city woman won't survive alone in Alaska. Randall roared. This debt is coming due. We need to buy those bastard port shares right now. Otherwise, the guys in Seattle will find me. Bear disconnected his radio. As you can see, playing the victim was crucial. We're going to Anchorage now. There's a courier waiting for you there. You'll get the paperwork and head to London. Bear, did you know your father used to work in private intelligence? This was a shocking truth that Amara's father, Vernon, had also concealed. My father wasn't the quiet fisherman Langston Rourke. He was a strategist who foresaw danger. With a whirring sound of cargo, the plane accelerated and headed for the runway. When I arrived in Anchorage, the city hadn't yet woken up that cold morning. A helicopter was waiting for us. Bear, resolutely and silently, guided me onto the helicopter. Inside was a middle-aged man in formal attire, the courier. Sierra Vance? He asked. I'm from Sterling. He handed me a thick, sealed envelope. Inside, the documents explained the true state of Randall's Vance logistics and the port rights I had inherited from my father. The document's title contained the dreaded word Vesper had learned. Debris? Randall thought the port rights company my father had left him looked grand. Yet, over the past decade, my father had slowly, through legal loopholes, stripped the company of all its real assets. The courier showed me the written note from Sterling. Randall, like Case's mother and sister, wanted the glamorous stuff, the company, the port, the fast money. Langston gave him exactly what he wanted, but this company was, in reality, a shell, burdened with debt. When Randall and Blair took over the port company, he would inherit not only the prestige, but also the more than $200,000 in gambling debts to the Seattle bookmaker syndicate, along with other massive debts my father had deliberately accumulated over the past 6 months. And at that very moment, a document the courier showed me completely exposed the enormity of Randall's scheme. Randall had taken out a loan, using the company's name as collateral to acquire the port rights. The loan was due exactly 72 hours after my disappearance. Randall's plan was this: poison me, make me disappear, take the inheritance, pay off some of the debt with the loan, and run off with Blair. What he didn't know, however, was that the actual debt burden on the port rights was far greater than he could ever repay. "So, where is my real inheritance?" I asked. The courier smiled. Langston Rourke used a local shell company, similar to the Solaris Group, Vesper's husband's company, to lure Randall. But 10 years ago, he funneled all the real profits into a legal but secret holding structure. That structure was called Arctic Star Global Holdings. Arctic Star Global Holdings, the powerful light of the Arctic. It was the financial fortress my father built for me. Where is this holding company headquartered? London. Sterling is the CEO and lawyer of this holding company. Langston left this company entirely in your name. All the debts and reputation of Vance Logistics will be theirs, just as Randall's mother and sister received them. You will fly to London to make them pay for their arrogance and greed. The courier handed me another envelope. Inside, as Vesper had found, was a one-way first-class plane ticket to London the next morning. There was one last message from Sterling. "North Star, you need to return to Alaska immediately. Randall went to the cabin and couldn't find you. He's panicking. Go back and continue selling him your lie. You're the desperate wife, exhausted by her husband's pressure." That was Amara's promise to Vernon. Act normal, play the broken woman, so Darnell and Loretta would fall into their trap. "Why should I go back?" I asked, looking at Bear. "To avoid suspicion in Randall's mind," Bear replied. "If you disappear, he'll immediately call the police, or the lawyers. If he can't find you, he'll rush into his insurance plan. He'll be alarmed by his debts and make mistakes. Your silence will make him think you're his ally. You must tell him you weren't freezing in the cabin, but that you only lasted one night and then ran home in fear. The plan was based on Randall losing control because of his debts. The helicopter dropped me off at a small airstrip outside Pinnacle Bay. The Bear retrieved my snowmobile from afar. You're on your own from here on, Sierra. I trust you. Act like you've fallen into this toxic trap they've prepared for you. Look broken and afraid. Remember, this is just a game. In the inside pocket of my oversized parka were the poison capsules, the debt ledger, and now a ticket to London. This ticket was the beginning of my revenge operation. At 7 Okshiholt, the sun hadn't yet risen. I was heading back to my house, the house where my husband had tried to kill me. I parked the snowmobile behind the house and hid the keys and satellite phone in my pocket. I approached the door, completely blue from the cold. I unlocked the door with the key. Inside, Randall was talking on the phone, looking exhausted and distraught. His eyes were bloodshot from exhaustion and lack of sleep. He saw me. His hand slipped from the phone receiver. His expression was a mixture of anger and pure astonishment, as if he'd seen a ghost. "Sierra, you're here? How did you get here?" I spoke in a broken voice, just like I'd heard him talk to Blair. "You left me there, Randall. It was so cold. The cabin, it was a ruin. I felt like I'd been left to die. The stove wouldn't work. The windows were broken. I couldn't stay there alone. I had to go back. I walked all night. My lie was unbelievable, but Randall's plan was based on my being poor and fragile. He had no doubt that I could come up with a clever plan. When Sierra boarded the plane from Anchorage, she was sitting in first class. Just 12 hours earlier, she had been freezing to death on the cold floor of a dilapidated shack where Randall had abandoned her to squalor. Now, a sumptuous meal and a comfortable bed awaited her, proving that her father had thought of her, even in his most trying moments. The business people sitting next to her were staring at her worn coat. But Sierra no longer paid them any attention. She was not the poor little wife Randall had mocked her for, but the strategist at the center of Operation North Star. After a tense 9-hour journey, the plane landed at London Heathrow Airport. The captain announced a light rain and a temperature of 8 degrees. 8 degrees? As Sierra passed through customs, she saw the attendant eyeing her one-way ticket and her single backpack with suspicion. But Sterling's assurance that everything had been arranged was confirmed by the UK entry stamp on her passport. She hurried through the luggage holding area. As she headed for the exit, she disappeared among the other passengers waiting. Panic returned, if only momentarily. She was completely alone in this vast, unfamiliar city. Then she remembered Silas's last message. "They're waiting for you." She scanned the crowd and saw a tall, silver-haired, pale-skinned man in an elegant black coat standing at the back of the lobby, away from the other groups of drivers. He held a small black tablet in his hand. On it, written plainly in gold letters, was Miss Sierra Vance. Sierra began to walk toward her. He bowed his head slightly, signaling that he was waiting for her in her weary and distraught state. "I'm Sierra," she whispered. He smiled slightly, not with pity, but with genuine respect, and spoke 7 words. "Welcome, mistress. This is your true legacy." Sierra stuttered in surprise. "My legacy? What are you talking about?" The man introduced himself. "I'm Sterling, your late husband's chief lawyer in London. What your mother-in-law and Randall received, madam, wasn't an inheritance. It was merely debris." Sterling guided Sierra not to a taxi rank, but to a private exit. Outside, under the gray London sky, a sleek black Rolls-Royce sedan waited, its engine running. A uniformed chauffeur hurried to open the rear door. Sierra stopped in surprise. 24 hours earlier, she had been in a muddy bus terminal. Now she was being greeted by a luxury car. "Please, Miss Sierra," Sterling said softly. "This is all yours." Sierra sank into the car's beige leather seat. When the door closed, the airport noise faded, giving way to a comforting silence. "Please, explain what happened," Sierra said, her voice breaking. "I thought Randall hated me. I thought he had abandoned me." Sterling's face softened with genuine compassion. "On the contrary, madam, Randall loved you deeply. He spent the last year of his life not only coping with his illness, but also building a plan to keep you safe." Sterling explained that Randall was no ordinary businessman. He had secretly built an international business empire over the past decade, headquartered in London. The Will Reed in Alaska was merely a performance. A theater, Sterling explained. Real estate, European properties, Swiss bank accounts, all of it was consolidated into a single entity, Arctic Star Global Holdings. Randall left 100% of that entity in your name. Sterling pulled out his tablet and showed a diagram. He explained how Randall exploited the greed of his mother, Genevieve, and sister, Serafina, just like in Vesper's story. Randall had transferred his Alaskan logistics company and port rights, the glamorous one, to Genevieve and Blair. But it was a debt shell, bloated by massive bank loans. When the loans mature, Sterling continued, and the banks see there's no real asset behind them, they'll foreclose on the collateral. They'll take the company, the port, everything. Your mother-in-law and Blair will be left with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Sierra remembered Randall laughing at her, Blair and her mother, throwing her suitcase in the mud. Randall had let them bask in a hollow victory. They were dancing on the sinking ship he had built. "So why did he let me suffer this humiliation?" Sierra asked. "Why did he let them throw me out?" Sterling's answer was clear. because the plan would only work if they truly believed you were worthless. If Randall had left you a visible legacy in America, they wouldn't have let you alone in the courts or the press. They'd have to despise you so much that they'd willingly kick you out of the house. Only then would you be out of their reach when everything exploded. The hunting lodge wasn't a punishment, it was a refuge. I had to cross the ocean from there and get to London before the real chaos began. The car pulled into a luxury neighborhood along the Thames. It soon stopped in front of a glass skyscraper. Sierra took a key-operated elevator directly to a penthouse. The interior was a massive penthouse, floor-to-ceiling glass walls, offering panoramic views of London. In the distance, the same bridge silhouette she'd seen in the picture from the cabin in Alaska. "This is your new home, Miss Sierra," Sterling said. "Randall bought it in your name 6 months ago." Sterling led me into an elegant office. On the desk was a slim laptop, the screen off, but ready to play a video file. Randall's face was visible in the preview. "This is his last message to you," Sterling said. "I'll give you some privacy." Sierra sat at the laptop, her heart pounding. With trembling fingers, she pressed the play button. Randall appeared on the screen. He was thin, but his eyes were bright with the intensity he knew. "My Sierra," he began, his voice breaking. "If you're watching this, it means our plan worked. You're out of there. You're in London, and that means I'm no longer with you. I'm sorry, my love. Forgive me." Tears began to flow. "I know you must be angry," Randall continued. "Seeing that will, hearing that you were left an old house, and everything was given to Mom and Blair, was like a knife. But I had no choice. I know Mom and Blair better than anyone. If I had left a normal inheritance, they would never have left you alone. They would have blamed you and tried to take every penny. And it would have been dangerous for you if they suspected I left something big." Randall said that, knowing he couldn't change his fate with his illness, he spent the rest of his time building a future for Sierra. The will you heard was poison to them, not to you. I gave them what they wanted, a seemingly powerful company, the mansion, the cars. I cast you as the loser, the poor childless wife sent to a run-down house. I knew they wouldn't be able to resist humiliating you and would throw you out. And when they did, you'd be exactly where you needed to be, away from them. But the truly shocking confession was Randall's confession. The Seattle debt syndicate, Blair included, was trying to kill him, not just for gambling debts, but also for preventing Randall from acquiring my father's port rights. Randall knew about the poison capsules. "The cabin was a haven," Randall continued, his voice softening. "I knew you'd find the key under that jasmine pot your father joked about. You'd find the key, get into the safe, see the picture of London, and buy your ticket out. I only packed the essentials, food and water. The plane ticket was for your rest. Arctic Star Global Holdings is yours, Sierra. Every share, every property. I was just the temporary manager. I knew you would be afraid, but you are the strongest woman I know. You endured my mother's scorn for years. You are stronger than any of them." Randall admonished Sterling to trust. While they sat laughing on a sinking ship, I was the one who cut the ropes. Then, with a tired, defeated smile, he said goodbye. When the message ended, Sierra collapsed on the table and wept for a long time. Randall hadn't betrayed her. He had loved her in the most complex and painful way. Sierra emerged from the bathroom, wearing new clothes, expertly chosen, just as Sterling had instructed, like the ones Vesper had been given. Her face was still tired, but her eyes were clearer now. Sterling turned back. "Are you ready, madam?" Sierra took a deep breath. What's the first thing I have to do? Sterling replied with a proud smile. Rest up first. I've ordered dinner. Tomorrow, we'll review all your assets. And the day after tomorrow, you'll chair your first board meeting as owner and CEO of Arctic Star Global Holdings. Welcome to your new life, Ms. Sierra. Sierra is now in London, at the center of her revenge plot. What confidential information do you think Sierra should have leaked on her first day as CEO to hasten Randall and Blair's downfall? Support us by leaving your comments. While Sierra was starting her new life in London, Randall and Blair in Alaska were basking in the glory of victory. Sierra's disappearance, she returned home a few days later, was a setback to their plans. But Randall believed Sierra had returned out of fear and signed the paperwork to transfer the debts. They thought they were getting rich by inheriting the port rights. However, Randall's relief was short-lived. Union creditors in Seattle knew that Vance Logistics' new debts were due. To celebrate firing Sierra, Randall and Blair threw a party at the town's largest bar. Blair wore an expensive gown, and Randall was handing out champagne. Just as Blair was saying, "Now we're finally free. That parasite Sierra is history," the door banged open. A dozen men, not in gala attire, but with serious faces, entered.